I'm a 25-year-old guy, and my parents were in the process of divorcing when my mother got diagnosed with a terminal illness. After the diagnosis, my father stalled the divorce proceedings. My father filed for divorce after 26 years of marriage after he fell in love with his younger business partner. She recently gave birth to his child. My mother was a stay-at-home mom for 25 years who took care of the entire household while my father worked long hours. She was blindsided when my father told her about wanting a divorce. He told her that he would always love her as his best friend and as the mother of his 5 children, but he was also in love with this other woman. My mother was devastated and stopped eating properly. In the middle of the divorce, she was diagnosed with terminal illness and was only given a few months to live. All this time, we, her children, have looked after her. I took her to her appointments and we paid for the treatment by taking loans. We didn't ask our father for money, even though he was willing to cover the expenses. Legally, at the time of her death she was still married to my father. During her last days, my father had to move to another city to be there for his daughter's birth. My uncle made a Facebook post asking for blood donation. She has a rare blood type and stated that she was critical. When my dad got to know about it, he immediately flew down to our city. When he showed up to the hospital, he was in a bad shape. His clothes were unkempt. He wanted to see my mother one last time. I told him that there was no use of that as she was unconscious. He begged and cried in front of everyone. I still didn't allow him to meet her. The hospital authorities let her family decide who was allowed to visit her. My mother passed away the next morning. He still didn't leave and wanted to be there for the funeral and memorial service. We banned him from attending. I believe that he lost the right to see her in her pain when he was the one who caused her immeasurable pain. My buddy tells me that me and my mother's family are the idiots for not letting him see her one last time. So let me get this straight. Your father cheated on your stay-at-home mom with a coworker, knocked her up, and decided to blindside your mother with a divorce and dip out to go be his new family. And then your mother fell into a horrible depression due to his betrayal and blatant disregard of her feelings, stopped taking care of herself, discovered she had a terminal illness, and unfortunately passed away from it. It's a proven fact that a terrible state of mind can worsen a terminal illness, and his father's betrayal probably had a lot to do with her deterioration during her illness. He didn't deserve to see her one last time and get closure because he wasn't worried about any of those things when he was cheating on his wife and then living it up with his new family before the divorce was even finalized. You're the idiot. You don't get in the way of things you have no depth of knowledge about. Was your dad wrong in the choices he made? Yes. Absolutely. But you don't really know the truth of their relationship all those years they were together. He at least deserved to see her one last time and pay his respects. I don't believe it is your right to be judge and jury in their marriage. Marriages are just too complicated for that. It is possible your mom needed that too. I truly do not blame you for what you did. He caused her a lot of pain. Where was he when she wasn't eating? Or had all of her appointments? Or even prior to her being critical? No, there was a divorce happening while she was going through a horrible illness. And he was off with his new lover and new family. I do not blame you for the amount of resent you have, and I probably would have done the same. In January of 2019, my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was in a completely inoperable part of the brain and was told me had 6 months to live. He stuck it out and died in October, 3 months longer than he was expected to. He was always positive and decided a few weeks after his diagnosis that he would write letters for our daughters for significant events in their lives. My husband was my soulmate, and the past few months have been difficult knowing I've lost him. We have 2 daughters, Mia who is 21 and Imogen, Emmy, who is 19. All 3 of us have become a lot closer since their dad's death, and we've all really struggled. My husband and I were together since we were children, got married when we were 18, and we were approaching our 20th wedding anniversary when he passed. In February of this year, Mia got married to a boy she's been with for about 6 years. I absolutely love her husband, and he's been incredibly supportive during all of our grief. My husband wrote a letter for Mia to open on her wedding day. It's worth noting that my daughters were unaware of these letters. It was my job to give them to our daughters. Her wedding day comes around, and I just can't bring myself to give her the letter. I read it and just wanted to keep it to myself. I had his handwriting and his words, and it felt like he was there, and I couldn't bear the thought of giving that up yet. I was fully intending on giving her all the other letters as the events happened. Last week Mia and her husband bought their first home together. They'd been living at our home since they got married and so had a lot of stuff to pack and move to their new house. Mia asked me where her important documents were, passport, birth certificate etc., so I told her they were in my top drawer of my dresser in my bedroom. The only letter that was in there was the one I was meant to give her on her wedding day, the rest were hidden away. She immediately recognized his handwriting and of course it was addressed to her, so she read it and broke down. She came and found me and started screaming at me asking how I could be so selfish. I didn't really know what to say apart from the fact that I wanted to keep it and she could take a picture of it. Both my daughters called me an idiot and are convinced I'm keeping them from a load of their dad's stuff. Am I the idiot? He wrote those on his deathbed and entrusted you with them to give to his daughters thinking that you would carry out his wishes. They were meant for them, not you. You can take the pictures and they get the original. She lost her father and didn't have him with her on a very significant day, and instead of giving him a piece that he left behind you're keeping it for yourself and saying that she can only have a picture. Those letters aren't about you. They're about his relationship with his daughters. Give them the letters, and if they are alright with it, take pictures of it. I don't blame them for getting angry. Yeah, you're grieving but they are too. If you were hiding a letter like that from them, in their eyes it's like, what else is she hiding? Are there more letters Dad wrote for us? Did he make something for us? Were there other things he wanted us to keep to remember him? The fact of the matter is that this letter was meant to be given to her at her wedding, not when you felt like it, not kept hidden away in your drawer, not for you to keep, it was for her. So not only did you hurt your own daughter, in a way you disrespected your own husband's wishes for what you were supposed to do with the letter and didn't fulfill that final request. What you've done here is a betrayal not only of your daughters but of your husband. One of his last wishes was that these letters be given to them at certain milestone points in their lives. He wanted them to read his words and know that he will always be with them in their hearts. It's terrible of you to keep that from them. It is selfish of you, not only to keep them, but to have read them as well. They weren't meant for you. It wasn't okay for you to read them and hoard them like you have. So my wife and I have 2 kids together. But before I met my wife I had a daughter with my now ex-wife. My daughter passed away when she was 7, and the emotional toll of this destroyed my marriage with my ex-wife. We haven't said a word to each other in almost a decade, and I have no desire to speak with her anyway. I still own the same house as then, and I've pretty much left my daughter's room as it was. At first it was just because there was no reason to, but now it's kind of like a memorial in some weird sense. I can't really explain the logic behind it because I don't think there is any. It just doesn't feel right to change her room. This has been the cause of the only arguments my wife and I have really had. The house has 4 bedrooms, so each of our kids have a room, we have a shared room, and then there's my daughter's old room. My kids know not to go in there, and it's just left there. Occasionally I will go in there and read a book or just lie down on her bed. It's therapeutic in some weird way. My wife has always wanted to change the room. At first it was because she wanted to study, but I refused, and eventually she gave up. We're now talking about having a 3rd child, and naturally she wants our new kid to have my daughter's old room. Again I put my foot down and said that wasn't an option and that our 2 older kids can share a room instead. She really blew up at me and told me she was sick of me holding on to the past. She was sick of me being unable to compromise on this. She was sick of feeling like my deceased daughter came first. She said a lot of things, but I think that basically sums it up. When she said these things I was really hurt. But I've had a few hours to think it over, and I think I might be the unreasonable idiot here. It's not fair to make my kids share a room because I won't let go of the past. It's not fair to have a memorial reminds my wife that she wasn't my first love. Am I the idiot? I think it's lovely you've kept her room as is, but there are other ways you can remember her, and honestly, it does seem a bit daft to make your kids share a room when you have a spare room, but I get that it hurts like hell. However, it's a chance to make new happy memories in that space, and surely that's a good thing in the long run. You're the idiot. I'm sorry for your loss. But forcing your older children to room together just so you can keep your daughter's room intact means you're prioritizing your dead child over your living ones. and the living ones should be a priority. You can have a corner somewhere in the house dedicated to her if you need that, but the main source of your memory of her is in your heart, not the objects. Your growing family's needs really have to come before the needs of your dead daughter. I know it's difficult, but you have to give up this room for the good of your family and marriage. No one says you have to forget her, but her ghost doesn't need a room. Let this room become a place of joy filled with the laughter of a third child. You don't have to move on, of course, my mother never did after my sister died at the age of 9. But the world will move on without you, regardless. It's your choice to live in the past. Eventually, it will become a very lonely place, and you may pay a high price for your stagnation. You've lost your first marriage as well as your daughter. How much more are you willing to lose? Because you will. My 4-year-old son John is the one of the twins I had. My other son was mishandled by a nurse and passed away shortly after birth. It was an unfortunate accident. Me and my husband left our unnamed son with the hospital and did not press charges against the nurse, much to our parents, both his and mine, displeasure. Our reason was that we had no time nor energy to deal with him. Our priority was to look after John, who was much smaller than his twin and needed more attention. While growing up, despite never being mentioned, John seemed to know that he once had a brother. He told us his made-up stories that he had about brothers, he played roles about brothers with his toys, and he even asked us to give him an older brother. Initially, me and my husband made a promise that we would never tell John about his unnamed brother, but now he wants to tell John about it when he is older. It must have been the guilt that we have never acknowledged our unnamed son's existence, even though they are both our sons. I am still standing firm to our promise. I believe that we should not dwell on the past and move on. John is my son and my little bundle of joy. I would never want him to know the sorrow of losing his brother. I want to convince him that his brother is just a fragment of his imagination. Now both my parents, my husband's parents and my husband is calling me cold-blooded. They want so much to include a deceased brother into John's life. He is still little, so it wouldn't be now, but they intended to tell him one day, and I cannot stop them. However, I will still try to convince them while there is time. He needs no such negativity from the past. Am I the idiot for thinking this way? No idiots here. John doesn't have these fantasies because he has a dead brother, he has them because it's perfectly normal for children that young to have fantasies about easily accessible playmates. I was lonely kiddo myself, and I begged my mother for a sister until she sat me down and explained that if she gave me a sibling, it would be a baby, far too young to play with me. There is absolutely nothing supernatural at work here. John isn't seeing ghosts. If you try to make him comprehend this loss, he will just be sad, so I really hope the family doesn't burden John with this until he's an adult. Your son feels something deep, and you're going to make him question that feeling his whole life. He knows that someone is missing, someone he developed within the womb, and I do think it would be unnecessarily cruel to let him keep feeling like his instincts are a lie. Simply the fact that he keeps bringing it up unprovoked is enough for me to say he knows. Help him rectify those feelings with reality when you and your husband decide he's old enough to understand. You're the idiot. You are lying to your son because you haven't processed your own grief. Forbidding your husband from telling the truth only makes it worse. Let him share in this knowledge so you can grieve together. Chances are he already knows and found out from dad or his grandparents. It's his right to know that he once had a brother. Even if you and your husband made this decision, it isn't up to you to decide if he deserves to know his brother or not. And I assure you, he will discover and he will hate you. It's better to tell him. 8 months ago my husband passed away. He had an adult son from a previous marriage, and the two of them weren't very close. I don't think they hated each other or anything like that. Honestly, I think the divorce had more to do with it. Because of reasons I won't go into here, his ex-wife basically had sole custody of their son, and the two of them never had a chance to fix that relationship. Anyway, my husband held some animosity about the whole affair because he felt like his son sided against him in the divorce. Right before he passed he made me promise not to give his relatives any of his possessions. He had a bad relationship with his family and he owned some family heirlooms, and I asked him, what about son's name, and he paused and he said, he doesn't get anything either. Honestly, I was shocked, but I was pretty much grieving at this point, so I didn't question it. Well, about a month ago his son reached out to me over email asking if he could have a couple of his father's items. He said he's been regretting that they never repaired their relationship and that he never got to say a proper goodbye. The items he asked about were small things like a gold lighter he remembers, I still have it, and a blue button-up shirt, I don't know which one specifically, but I still have all of his old clothes. I responded and told him that unfortunately it would go against his father's wishes to give him anything, and he replied very politely, I'm sorry to hear that. Thanks for responding. And that was it. About a week later his mother sends me an email calling me names and an idiot for not giving her son the things he asked for and that I'm basically preventing him from moving on. I didn't respond and I blocked her email and I haven't heard anything since. I've been feeling sick ever since this happened. I'm still trying to move on from his passing and I'm not trying to stop him from moving on, I'm just trying to honor my deceased husband's wishes, but I feel like I've done the wrong thing and I don't know how to handle this. Was she right? Am I in the wrong? All of this sounds terrible. Your husband put you in a terrible position. But here's the thing. He's gone. Why pass on the pain and animosity he felt in his life in regards to his family, to his son? He isn't asking for money or anything ridiculous. Just something to make him feel closer to his deceased father. It's not really your fault, but I think you probably made a bad choice here. Not the idiot. I'm guessing you're the executor of your late husband's will, and the executor has both a legal and moral obligation to carry out the will according to the deceased's wishes. Your husband's son seemed to respond well to it. I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry this woman is being so nasty to you because of it. First of all, you are respecting your husband's wishes. Second of all, his son is hurting too and asked for very simple things that he remembers from his estranged father. If they hold great importance to you, keep them. But this may be much more than that to him. If anything, maybe try to connect with his son. Get to know him, talk about his dad. It may mean more than you know to him. If he is young, and was young when everything happened, it could have skewed his entire view and made things much harder, especially with his mother involved. Maybe just try to be there for him. If the items aren't special to you, give them up, but also try to share some things with his son about him. It may be good for both of you. The dead husband is the only person I'm convinced is the true idiot. The mom should have never spoken like that, but her child was in pain, and OP wouldn't give him an old shirt to make him feel closer to his father. I would probably do the same if my son was refused any memento of his dead dad. Of course, she should have approached OP differently, or not at all, but the real idiot is the dying man who was so petty and cowardly that he used a dying wish to demand that his wife hurt his child one more time.